moved to a much earlier slot compared to 2014. Round 2 takes place in Mexico and the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez circuit. We're only one round in, and it's already been a very strange and fascinating season because the form book hasn't just been turned upside down, it's been thrown onto a bonfire about the size of Leeds. Because the team I had predicted to come last, Andrew Racing, they actually won the first race, courtesy of Daniel Ricciardo, and thanks to teammate Antonio Felix da Costa coming 8th in that race, Andrew Racing's 13 points means that they've already scored as much in that one race as they did in the entirety of 2014. Furthermore, the team that had predicted to come last of the manufacturers, they were the highest placed manufacturers and are actually leading the 5 manufacturer teams. So it's already been a very strange start to the season, and judging by the practice times, which have seen Cooper Lee and who else topped it? Mattia Alfonsi for Gajera, we should expect to see this strange trend continue throughout the whole season. Here's a look at the circuit. As you can see, a big long straight into a right-left-right S sequence that should pose as the main overtaking spot, leads into another straight followed by a quicker left-right sequence that slows down gradually, and then a sequence of about 9 corners that make up the entirety of the middle sector, all of which get faster, and then the climax of it, no pun intended, going through the long fast right at Peraltada. Last season saw Lewis Hamilton win for Gajera, having taken pole position and fastest lap as well, so he did the Grand Slam there. He'll have a trickier job replicating that with Exolite. So the starting grid, and in only their second race of the FF1M career, Meister have a pole position courtesy of Kimi Raikkonen, who takes his first pole position since Brazil in 2013. He's joined by Roman Grosjean, and there's Nico Hulkenberg and Sebastian Vettel, an all-German row 2, and Vettel the highest of the manufacturer teams. Felipe Massa backs up Meister's strong performance with 5th, and then the Australian Grand Prix winner, Daniel Ricciardo, will start 6th. It's an all-Tornado row 4, with Alonso ahead of Thomas Gonzalez, who finally scored some points with a 6th in Australia. Then we've got 2014 Mexican GP race winner Lewis Hamilton, ahead of Mexican Sergio Perez in 10th, who had a good drive in Australia to finish 2nd from 9th on the grid. Valtteri Bottas and Nico Rosberg are 11th and 12th. And then next up we have got Antonio Felix da Costa, who had a decent race in Australia to finish 8th, points on his debut race. The same cannot be said for 14th place Stoffel Vandoorne. Carlos Sainz is 15th after a slightly messy Australian weekend, even more so for Cooper Lee, who crashed out. Former FJR teammates Kevin Magnussen and Jenson Button share row 9, and then row 10 sees an all-manufacturer affair with Itsuki Yoshida ahead of Jean-Eric Vergne, and the trend continues on row 11, the back row, with Robert Kubica 21st, and a driver whose seat will probably become under pressure from newly crowned FF1M Asia champion Cristobal Alvarez. Charles Pic had better watch his back. And just awaiting the starting grid, there you can see the red light comes on. It's a bit different this time because the green light goes on now. And from the inside, Kimi Raikkonen gets a very, very good start, Grosjean much less so, and that has already put Nico Hulkenberg into the slipstream of the Meister driver, but Grosjean is coming back, has had a good second phase of the start, and Sebastian Vettel's going to come up the inside of all of them and take second position from Grosjean and Hulkenberg, but it is Kimi Raikkonen who leads the race at the moment as they go on to the next bit of straight. Daniel Ricciardo's up a position, he's got ahead of Felipe Massa, and Thomas Gonzalez has also gained a place courtesy of his teammate Fernando Alonso, side by side between Roman Grosjean and Nico Hulkenberg through 4 and 5, that will be, and now into the sequence of S's. There you can see the chart on the top left, you can see Kimi Raikkonen, Sebastian Vettel, Nico Hulkenberg, the top 3. Any other gainers and losers? Well, Jenson Button's had a poor start, down to 21st, Magnussen has gained a position, I believe. He might well have done. In fact, he stayed 17th. And just looking at some other gainers and losers, I think Valtteri Bottas has had a very good start. Sebastian Vettel challenging for the lead at Peraltada. That's the lead for Sebastian Vettel. So immediately the shake and bake moves up to the front. On the harder tyres is Sebastian Vettel and sets the fastest lap in the process. Although being the first lap, it's not too difficult to do so if you're gaining positions. Speaking of which, Hulkenberg is trying a move on Grosjean as we have a look at a replay. This is Antonio Felix da Costa we are looking at, side by side with an F-jar. Big contact with an F-jar. That is Magnussen, and upside down goes da Costa. Big crash for himself and Kevin Magnussen, and I think both are out. Magnussen is continuing, but he has lost his rear wing, so his race is effectively trashed, as is da Costa's. Here's an onboard from Magnussen. See up the inside, and you can see da Costa just closing the door ever so marginally, but that was enough. It would probably go down as a racing incident, but goodness me, that was a major incident. Yeah, there's a wheel gone, so da Costa is definitely out. Magnussen continues. Here's Roman Grosjean now up the back of Nico Hulkenberg. And is he going to make a move going into the Peraltada? It looks like he's going to do. Don't make contact. You don't want another Magnussen and da Costa moment. Or for that matter, last season we saw Daniel Ricciardo and Jenson Button having a massive collision. That was courtesy of a spun Button, and then Ricciardo just didn't recognise the incident. Hulkenberg is back alongside Grosjean as they go under braking for the first sequence of corners. That is third position regained for Hulkenberg, and it looks as if the lap charts have gone a bit buggery, because there was a whole load of not availables. And Bottas has got ahead of Fernando Alonso for 8th position, so there's positions being gained and lost all over the place, but the main mover is Valtteri Bottas. So into the S's they go once again. There's Ricciardo, there is Gonzalez, there is the man on the move, Valtteri Bottas. Again, a very messy race for Bottas in Australia, and it's going to be a deja vu, because Roman Grosjean up the inside of Hulkenberg once again into the Peraltada. They're side by side, they're remaining side by side, but Hulkenberg is backing off now. Now he's in the slipstream of Grosjean, and deja vu part 2. Hulkenberg is going to get up alongside. Oh, goodness me, that is Magnussen exiting the pits. Now he's a lap down after pretty much doing an entire lap with no rear wing. Oh, he's going to prove to be a bit of a nightmare for the drivers behind. First of which is Felipe Massa. Bottas is going to run wide. He's going to run wide. Is he going to spin? Not quite. He's going to lose a lot of positions. He's dropped down to 14th position behind Itsuki Yoshida. Is that going to be 15th? Because Jean-Eric Vergne is looking a bit racy on the back of Bottas. And what have we got here? We've got a replay. Is Sainz in trouble? I think it's Sainz in trouble because he's just lost a position to Bottas. A very unusual part of the circuit. Yes, a loose wheel on the Spaniard's car. So he's going to have to make a pit stop to remedy that. And we're in lap 6. So that's going to shock the Spaniard's race a bit. He's holding up a big queue of cars. I think he's holding up Vergne. Rounding the final of the S's. Now he's going to peel right into the pits, but as long as Vergne recognises it, as long as everybody recognises it, who is going to be victim to this? It is going to bully up. They're all fine. Sainz into the pits. What have we got? Charles Pic versus Robert Kubica, or Jean-Eric Vergne, going into the first corner. And we have lost the lap chart on the left, so Amazon, you're rubbish. Jenson Button making a move on one of the Willows now, and they're side by side going into 4 and 5. Would like it if they name these corners. That's Rodriguez Curve, and they're still side by side. That's a brave one. As now something happened to Felipe Massa because he's dropped a position to Daniel Ricciardo. We're about to see that very incident now. So start of the S's, turns left no problem, turns right, still no problem for now, but here we go into the left. That's a big problem as he runs a bit wide and tags the wall, but gets away with just losing one position. Now he's going to come under pressure from the two Tornadoes. Gonzalez ahead of Alonso. At some point, Alonso got ahead of Gonzalez, but Gonzalez took that back, and now he's taking Massa. And Hamilton is going to do something about Alonso. That was a bad lap for Alonso, has lost effectively 3 positions. Lewis Hamilton is about to go onto the move now. He's going to take Gonzalez. But look at that power from the Tornado Climax engine. They've got some good horsepower. Maybe they're running higher engine modes. It's 3 wide going into the first corner. That is not to be recommended. And they all get away with it. And Alonso has pluckily retaken the position away from Lewis Hamilton. Let's see. Hamilton's up the inside. Is he defending or is he attacking? He's not really doing either. Felipe Massa's having to do some defending off one of the Willows, who's made his way nicely up the order. Is that Nico Rosberg or is that Stoffel van Dorn? Let's find out as we have a look at Roman Grosjean now, about to make a move on Nico Hulkenberg. You can see behind, Magnussen's keeping up, but he's not in this battle. He's trying to unlap himself, make some use out of his, what is now a test session. Let's see if they can hold on till the end, and then FJR Judd will get full development from the engine. Minus a lap. Up the inside now, there's Grosjean and Hulkenberg, and Magnussen's trying to take some of them. Trying to take Hulkenberg, but backing out of that one. It's Grosjean who hangs on to third position at the moment. The Pedersen is a quick car, because Perez proved that in Australia. Now here is Fernando Alonso versus Thomas Gonzalez. Meanwhile, up at the front, we've got Sebastian Vettel at 5.6 seconds ahead of Kimi Raikkonen. And Raikkonen is only 1.6 seconds ahead of Roman Grosjean, the battling Grosjean and Hulkenberg. Speaking of battling, Alonso has now just taken the 6th position away from Thomas Gonzalez, his young Argentine teammate. And next on Gonzalez, his reverse hit list is Lewis Hamilton, because he's right up the back of the Tornado. Customer Ilmore versus Works manufacturer Climax. And Excellite still using the hard tyres. Now in terms of pitch strategies, I didn't quite see what we were expecting, but I don't think anybody's going to one-stop. Oh, there's a car parked. Who is that? It's Hulkenberg! Hulkenberg has had another nightmare. He had a nightmare in Australia, and it seems to have continued. Now, what has happened? Has he just gone on his own? Yes, he's run a bit wide. Same place as Massa, but a harder thud into the concrete wall means that he's lost a wheel and he is out of the race. Mitchell will be gutted with that. So that moves Roman Grosjean up into third, and he has got some pace because he is closing up to Kimi Raikkonen now, just a second behind the pole sitter and the flying Finn. And Raikkonen, of course, very unlucky to retire late from what was, I believe, 2nd position in Australia with I think it was a puncture. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but very unlucky to lose that with just a few laps to go. But it is clear that Meister have got a very good car underneath them, because obviously Raikkonen got pole position and Massa got 5th on the grid. Massa also got a podium in Australia, and that was a fantastic debut for the new team, in purple and white. Now here is Grosjean going through the Peraltada. He's going to try and get into some sort of slipstream of the Meister Climax. Let's see the gap as they cross the line. 0.549 of a second. And not exactly close enough to benefit from the slipstream, but getting it to a top speed of 315 kilometres an hour. That is about 196 miles an hour. You can see Grosjean has got the grip on the softer tyres. Look at Magnussen keeping up, but remember he's not in this battle. Crossing the first sector point, Raikkonen and Grosjean. And up at the front, Vettel is continuing to pull away. He's now 6.8 seconds ahead of Kimi Raikkonen. And you can see just a half a second between Raikkonen and Grosjean. Hulkenberg's retirement has moved Daniel Ricciardo up into 4th position, with Alonso now in 5th. Comfortably ahead of Lewis Hamilton, I'd say now. It's 2.6 seconds the gap. Hamilton has got ahead of Gonzalez, because Gonzalez was ahead as they started this lap, but the 2012 champion has got ahead of the 2014 FF1M champion. And I'm missing this action because Roman Grosjean has just taken 2nd position off of Kimi Raikkonen, but now Kimi Raikkonen is back into the slipstream, and as these two battle, that is just helping Sebastian Vettel. But both Shake and Bakes retired from the first race, so it could be that they have a very fragile car underneath them, although it is very quick in the hands of Vettel. Meanwhile, what else have we got? Is this Valtteri Bottas making a move on Thomas Gonzalez, going through the Peraltada, and there's Massa lurking up in the background as well. So we're going to see the Brazilian take his neighbouring countryman, Thomas Gonzalez, but Gonzalez is having a go back at Valtteri Bottas. And there was a brief top speed of 319 kilometres an hour as Gonzalez retakes Bottas, who runs a bit too wide at the first few corners, but just about gets away with it, although he has lost the position to Gonzalez. So now Felipe Massa, can he do something about it? And just behind them we have got Willows and Sergio Perez coming up to this slot. So I wonder if Gonzalez is holding is holding the pace up a bit behind himself. Just trying to work out which Willows that is. Well, let's have a look at Felipe Massa as Bottas and Gonzalez go side by side once again. And they're jockeying as well between Raikkonen and Grosjean, because Raikkonen has just retaken second off of Grosjean once again. Now into the slipstream, and Gonzalez, is he going to outbrake Bottas going into the first corner under the Goodyear Bridge? Yep, that's another position saved for Gonzalez as Bottas does the Dan Deer around the outside. Now we're going to see it once again. Here's Bottas once again up the inside of Gonzalez at Peraltada. Bottas on the yellow mediums, Gonzalez on the blue hards. What tyres is Massa on? I think it was hards from what I saw. But now Bottas has got enough of a gap to defend his position a little bit better, although here comes the climax power. But is it going to be 3 wide going into the first corner? Bottas defending, and that was well defended from Bottas, if a bit aggressive, but well defended nonetheless. Now, we saw Raikkonen and Grosjean battling again. Here they are again on lap 14 this time into the Peraltada. And side by side as they go through. Raikkonen's on the yellow medium tyres and Grosjean on the red softs. Now Raikkonen looking to regain that position once again. And interesting, they're both lapping at the same pace as Vettel. And I saw some more jockeying for position between Bottas and Gonzalez. I think Bottas took that position once again, but is Gonzalez going to do something about it? Let's keep an eye on that as Romain Grosjean is now in second position ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, and there is the lapped Magnussen. Now here's Sergio Perez in 11th position, chasing one of the Willows. I think it is Stoffel Vandoorne, because he did qualify ahead of Nico Rosberg. But is this Perez running wide? Perez onto the grass. He's hit the wall. And that's a wheel off. Sergio Perez is out of the race. He's parked it in a very, very awkward position onto the curb, almost beaching it. And there's wheels coming across the circuit. And somebody's hit the wheel, bounced it out of the way. Now, did he hit the wheel again? Let's have a look at... Oh, there's a front wing gone. And Cooper Lee has just retired from the race after the suspension failure. The car's definitely lost his front wing, and I think it was Stoffel Vandoorne into the pits. He's trying to come into the pits, but there is a Gojira making a move on him. And there's Valtteri Bottas out of the race. He's crashed. Has he crashed it? That's Perez crashed. But has Bottas himself crashed it? So it's all kicking off on lap 16. We've seen a spate of retirements, including Perez, and Bottas going way too wide. Now, what's he going to do? Oh, dear. Oh, dearie me. That is dreadful driving. Right into the path of the other Willows of Nico Rosberg. So, both Willows having a very, very bad lap. Into the pits and out of the pits actually comes Romain Grosjean. Quite early and quite a lot of fuel going on board, so Grosjean might be attempting a 2-stop strategy. We'll have to see how that pans out once he comes into the pits for the second time. And I think Sebastian Vettel is about to make a pit stop. He's got a very comfortable lead of 12.5 seconds now over Kimi Raikkonen. As through the Peraltada, through some grass, which shouldn't really be there, let's call it moss, as it seems to have grown on the tarmac. Into the pit garage comes Sebastian Vettel. How much fuel? So he had 4 laps of fuel remaining, 27 laps coming on to the shake and bake. So that should take him to lap 46. That's a definite 2-stop strategy with a short-ish first stint, as Kimi Raikkonen comes into the pits as well. 6.9 seconds, not a particularly quick stop compared to some of the others that we've seen, such as the 4.7s and 4.6s. So Alonso temporarily leads the race, and is this Gonzalez having a bit of a wide moment? Now some drivers have lost wheels. Gonzalez is not one of them, but he is going to have a spin. He's going to block the circuit a bit, and more debris flying off the front wings. And that's Grosjean as well. So Grosjean, having just pitted, is going to have to come in again. So he's not read that one particularly well. And meanwhile, Felipe Massa into the pits, as is Fernando Alonso. I think 2-stop strategies are the way to go, as Charles Pic comes into the pits, as does Itsuki Yoshida. So pit stops well underway, as Alonso rejoins ahead of a Gojira of Kubica. He's made his way up the field, but has to make a pit stop. We're on board with the Pedersen, and Pedersen understeering quite badly. That's Grosjean. Grosjean behind Charles Pic, who started last, but so far kept out of trouble. and one of the Gajeras, that's Jean-Eric Verne defending a bit from Pick. And I think Ricciardo is now in the pits. Indeed he is. I saw him lose the lead to Vettel. Here's a look at the Frenchman Charles Pic, and he's going to make a move on Jean-Eric Verne for 13th position. He's got some good grunt under there. Is that higher engine modes or is that natural power? But, ooh, there's nearly contact between Pic and Verne, the two Frenchmen. It's actually 3 Frenchmen, all tied together with a piece of string. And just in front there's Itsuki Yoshida. There is Thomas Gonzalez, having rejoined from his own pit stop. That's Cooper Lee on the side of the road there, so that's where he had his suspension failure, on this very, very bumpy circuit, with some very, very high curbs. So, first pit stops should be done now, and that's Fernando Alonso making a move on Kimi Raikkonen for second. Alonso's having a very good race. He started 7th on the grid, kept out of trouble, had a bit of a tussle with Gonzalez and Hamilton, but he's managed to gain track position over quite a lot of other drivers that aren't Sebastian Vettel, who holds a 16.7 second lead over Alonso. So it's Vettel, Alonso, Raikkonen, Daniel Ricciardo 4th, Lewis Hamilton's up to 5th position, so he's had a good race from 9th on the grid. I'll double check that. As we have a look at Charles Pic, who's going to make a move on Thomas Gonzalez. So Pic's not having a bad race actually, he's made his way up to 10th position now. He can see Yoshida and Rosberg, so he's not doing too badly. Lewis Hamilton did indeed start 9th on the grid. Here's Romain Grosjean. He's going to have an off. He's not going to hit the wall, but he's going to rejoin to the circuit. Oh, that's a clumsy spin for Romain Grosjean. Now be careful, because you knocked your own front wing off driving into Gonzalez. Make sure you don't do the same on any other drivers. And Charles Pic, oh goodness me, that's a suspension failure for Pic. So Pic's good race comes to an early end thanks to a broken left rear wheel. And he's going to park up right behind Cooper Lee. And there's a marshal running onto the curb to warn drivers that there's a couple of cars parked. Confirmation that it is a suspension failure. Exactly the same as Cooper Lee. So there's green flags waving. Is this Jenson Button? I believe it is Jenson Button. And he's going to turn left. Many drivers have done this, and Jenson Button has just done the same. And this time he's lost his wheels. That's 2 wheels gone actually. Impressive. I wonder if anybody's going to try knocking 3 wheels off of that. And another problem, this is Itsuki Yoshida, who's indicated an electrical problem on his steering wheel. That's a bit of a shame, because at the moment he was running in 8th, and he'd started 19th on the grid. And there's a battle, Rosberg and, no, it's Vernon Gonzalez battling into the Peraltada. And there's some good grunt on that Mugen, but Gonzalez also has some good grunt. Now, is he going to try and outbrake Verne going into the first corner? Nope, not quite. Verne very late on the brakes and making the apex beautifully. Is there going to be a new battle between Raikkonen and Ricciardo on the circuit? Right on cue, actually. This is at half distance now. That's a bit optimistic, but Raikkonen saw him coming. Daniel Ricciardo on the move, looking for his second podium in a row. On board with the Australian as he chases the Finn. Going alongside now, going into the first corner. Long straight. And some of the speed actually dipped as Ricciardo exited the slipstream. Went down from 319 to 317. But third position now for Daniel Ricciardo. He's on the move. Next target is Alonso. It's some 5 or so seconds. As we have a look at the recovering Grosjean. Or is this Sergio Perez? Hard to tell. But I think it is Grosjean versus Stoffel van Dorn through the Peraltada. And now they're going to do battle on the long straight. This is a drag race. Now let's see what customer Ilmore's like against manufacturer Ilmore. And it will give us a good clue as to whether Willows are running higher engine modes. It doesn't look like it, because Grosjean managed to stay side by side and was later on the brakes. So here's Lewis Hamilton now versus Raikkonen. Ricciardo has made a pit stop. This is not a true position, But Lewis Hamilton on a lighter fuel load is doing something about it, because he's briefly up to third, but now Kimi Raikkonen is trying to look back at Hamilton. Hamilton is in the slipstream of a lapped Willows of Van Dorn, and now aggressively defending his position is Hamilton, but he is due in the pits this lap. So this should give the position back to Raikkonen, as Felipe Massa comes into the pits. Into the pit box, which do have white overalls, but there's a bit of blue on it. Sort of resembles last year's Horizon, really. And out of the pits in 5.5 seconds, plus the time it takes to go through the pit lane, goes Felipe Massa, and he's lost the position to Lewis Hamilton. In fact, that might have been for position between Hamilton and Raikkonen, because Raikkonen is now due in the pits this very lap. So this is an important pit stop for Meister, and he's got a clear run into the pit lane, no traffic to bother. So this will move Fernando Alonso back up to second position. Daniel Ricciardo will reassume third, and slowing down to 81 kilometers an hour goes Raikkonen. And the pit box is quite a way down the pit lane, because Meister are one of the last teams. They're the newest team on the grid, so they'll have the pit garages further down. On go another set of mediums, and 5.1 seconds later, out goes Raikkonen. Here's Hamilton, he's a long way ahead of Raikkonen. So that is fourth position, and there's Massa passed as well. So the middle phase of the race hasn't really worked out well for Kimi Raikkonen, because then that's Nico Rosberg who has blown up. So that's going to move, well, looks like Robert Kubica up a position. And then behind, who on earth is that? That is a Pedersen, so that looks like either Perez or Romain Grosjean. In fact, it's Grosjean, because Perez crashed out earlier on. And, oh, that's Lewis Hamilton out of the race, so he's had a mechanical issue. That's not going to please James Whiteley at all. Now, what has happened to the Exolite? It's a puncture, so that's unlucky for Lewis Hamilton. That will move both Meisters up a position. So Felipe Massa will be fourth, Kimi Raikkonen will be fifth. Moving up to sixth will be Jean-Eric Vergne, who's had a very good drive from 20th on the grid, and bang goes Grosjean. That is a big, big fire. So some sort of recovery has ended for the Frenchman. And let's review the rest of the top eight. Gonzalez is seventh, not having had a great race. He had an off earlier on, and then lost his front wing against that very driver there. And Robert Kubica's made his way up to 8th position. Again, not a bad effort from 21st on grid. Lap 55. There's a shake and bake has blown up. Is that Sebastian Vettel? I think it is Sebastian Vettel. That is dead unlucky there. And this will put Fernando Alonso into the lead of the race, with Ricciardo second and Felipe Massa up to third. So bad luck for shake and bake. Have they been running higher engine modes once again? Because both retired in Australia and both have been in the wars in Mexico. Now, where is Alonso? He should be taking the lead very, very shortly. That was a lapsed Gonzalez that went through. As Vettel now pulls off, that should be Kubica going through to effectively unlap himself. And keep an eye out for Fernando Alonso, as it'll be confirmed probably water leak, but ultimately an engine failure. Well, it's an engine failure indeed. So where is Alonso? There's Alonso to take the lead of the race, with 11 laps to go. Now what we're looking at, Kevin Magnussen, who's managed to keep himself in the race, he's going to move up to 9th. Although he's actually under pressure from Carlos Sainz, so Sainz will eventually move up to 9th. They're behind Itsuki Yoshida, so in fact Magnussen's just pulled back ahead, so that's either higher engine modes or the Judd is not bad. And they're both chasing. This will be for the final points between Yoshida, Magnussen and Sainz. And there are a few other drivers lurking in the background as well. Up the inside into turn 4, that's a brave one from Magnussen. And if he gets a point out of this, that'll be an amazing recovery for Magnussen, having lost his rear wing right at the beginning of the race against Antonio Felix da Costa. I think Ricciardo's about to lap this lot. And we're about to see Yoshida move into the points right now because there's Vettel parked. But for how much longer? Because through the final left they go, under the Campari Bridge, into the Peraltada. It's Magnussen who's going to make the move on Yoshida, going into the Peraltada. They're side by side, they're still side by side. Yoshida tucks back into the slipstream. Not really, he's not really doing that, and this is going to give Sainz an opportunity to take the pair of them, perhaps. Magnussen's edging ahead of both of them at the moment. Who's going to be bravest on the brakes? Oh, there's contact between Magnussen and Sainz, and Yoshida's the bravest on the brakes. Around the outside of 2. Now Magnussen's got the inside into 3, and that is a position gain for Magnussen. Yoshida's still trying to be side by side with the Dane. And you can see Ricciardo about to lap the pair of them. Side by side through 4, and then 5. Still side by side through 5. Magnussen versus Yoshida. Is Yoshida going to try and brave it around the outside? Indeed he is. He's held on to 8th position, but now is on this slightly unfavourable line through the S's. Now he's back in line. But he's going to become under pressure once again going into the Peraltada. Oh, he's a bit wide as Yoshida. He's going to hang on to that. He's just about hung on to that one. Great scrap between these 3, but now they're about to be lapped by Daniel Ricciardo. And who is behind Ricciardo? I think it's another lap driver. It could be Van Dorn. As up the inside into the Peraltada. Once again, Yoshida's trying to squeeze him a bit. And there's side by side still. Now, what on earth is going to happen? There's 4 cars absolutely together. 3 are for position. 1 is to be one is lapping all of them. And they're not exactly being cooperative. Magnussen and Yoshida. Into the first corner they go. Nearly contact, but Yoshida hangs on once again. I bet Andrew Racing would have been a bit scared about that one because Ricciardo was lapping all 3 of them at the same time. It might actually be a 4-way battle soon up the inside at 4. Oh, contact between Magnussen and Yoshida, but both hang on. This is a dicey scrap between Yoshida, Magnussen, Sainz, and soon to be Van Dorn. As they now go through the S's once again. 61 laps gone, and it is Fernando Alonso who leads for Tornado. The team had predicted to... Whoa, Yoshida's very wide once again, and Magnussen... Now they're side by side through the S's, into the final 2 corners of the S's. And is Yoshida going to hang on, or is Magnussen going to do something about it? Is Van Dorn going to do something about all 3 of them? This could be the best overtake of the race if Van Dorn pulls something off. He's got one of them already, he's got the other. Now is Van Dorn going to do something about Yoshida as they go across the line? But is Magnussen going to do something about Yoshida himself? You can see Yoshida on the left. And Van Dorn couldn't quite do anything about it in the end. Now Magnussen, braver on the brakes, he's taken 8th position away from Yoshida. And I can see Yoshida already dropping back a bit, so if Magnussen hangs on for this point, that will cap off a pretty amazing recovery, considering he had no rear wing and he had to do an entire lap with no rear wing. Meanwhile, Alonso is extending the gap over Daniel Ricciardo. It's now 11.3 seconds. And Massa is some 20 seconds off of Alonso. Now here's Carlos Sainz. He's going to have a look at making a move on Yoshida. And Yoshida's off the track! He's off the track! And the pressure just got to him. And he's spun it on the curb. Exactly the same as Grosjean and to a certain extent Thomas Gonzalez. Now here is Fernando Alonso on the final lap of the race. Had a bit of a shambolic Australian Grand Prix in all honesty. Quite unlucky in some ways because on the second lap of that race, Felipe Massa was making a move on, I believe it was Cooper Lee, into turn 3. Alonso on the outside of the pair of them just got caught up in Massa and Lee's incident. But Alonso's more than made up for that in Mexico. Been a good drive from 7th on the grid as out of the final corner, Fernando Alonso takes his first win of the season with a Tornado. Now that is what Tobias will have been expecting. And about to come second shortly will be Daniel Ricciardo. Let's keep an eye out for him in the background, and you can see just about there, trying to put a lap on Kevin Magnussen once again. So, Fernando Alonso, 26th career victory. ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, and Felipe Massa gets his second podium in a row for Meister. Second, third place in a row for that matter. And speaking of second in a rows, that's the first time since 2008 since Andrew Racing have had 2 consecutive podium finishes. A very modest record compared to some other teams, but nonetheless well deserved. Fourth position should be Kimi Räikkönen, and no retirement this time for the Meister driver. So both Meisters in the top 4, that's a great result for them. Jean-Eric Vergne, good recovery drive from 20th on the grid to finish 5th ahead of Thomas Gonzalez. So there's 2 Tornadoes in the top 6. Robert Kubica comes home 7th, making it 2 Gujeras in the points. And capping off a decent recovery drive, Kevin Magnussen takes points for FJR. And further back you can see Carlos Sainz for GRM in 9th position, Stoffel Vandoorne 10th and Itsuki Yoshida 11th. And those were the finishers, because Sebastian Vettel, again from the lead of the race, suffering reliability issues, this time from the engine. Romain Grosjean, oil leak, big fire as a result of it. Lewis Hamilton suffering a puncture, and then Nico Rosberg another engine problem for Willows. And then both Mitchells retiring very early. That's going to hamper development for the climax, as is Antonio Felix da Costa's retirement. And you can see Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez and Charles pick some of the other retirements from this race. So what does that do for the Drivers' Championship? Well, Daniel Ricciardo leads by 8 points thanks to his win and second place. It's Fernando Alonso who holds second thanks to his win over Felipe Massa. Both drivers have 12 points, but Alonso ahead on countback. Sergio Perez is 4th ahead of Thomas Gonzalez 5th. Then we've got Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Räikkönen, Kevin Magnussen, Jean-Eric Vergne and Carlos Sainz completing the top 10. There's Robert Kubica down in 11th, but both Gujeras have scored points. That puts them 5th in the Constructors' Championship behind Andrew Racing, Tornado, Meister and Pedersen. The top 3 teams all on Climax engines, but the bottom team is also on Climax. Mitchell haven't had a good start to the season despite a quick car. The highest of the manufacturer teams is Tornado, but it's FJR who are next up in 7th. Then GRM are 8th, Shakenbake 9th, Willows down in 10th. The bottom 3 teams yet to score points. So that was Mexico. We will be remaining in the Central and South American region and heading over to Brazil for the Brazilian Grand Prix. We'll see you then.